Welcome to the Friday Night Campfire Stories. I'm Rob and I'll be your host for this evening, and this is my series, Echoes of the Past, where we look into the darkest locations in the world and look at the history and hauntings that surround them. Today we have a little bit of a throwback as we will be revisiting the very first location we ever covered in the series, the Farrar Elementary School. Now for those that are into ghost hunting or YouTube ghost hunting, and you guys may recognize the name of that school. It is because it is the school that Sam and Colby have purchased and have investigated numerous times, and other paranormal investigation teams have also investigated. The reason I wanted to revisit this is because I did put so much time and effort into the research of this building and really tried to figure out what could be haunting it, because as you see, a lot of the history of the school didn't make a whole lot of sense of why it was haunted. I think I brought up a lot of good points in this video that a lot of people haven't even thought about, and I think it's a lot of good plausible explanations for what is causing the hauntings in this building, or who is haunting this building. So I don't want to yap much longer. I want to get you guys into this. I know why you guys are here, so let's check it out. This is my series, Echoes of the Past. Welcome to Farrar, Iowa. Population, barely over 30. This quiet, shrinking town is home to an unsettling landmark that has drawn paranormal investigators and curiosity seekers from across the country, the Farrar Elementary School. Farrar Elementary opened its doors in 1922 on land donated by farmer C.G. Geddes. For almost 80 years, it served as a beacon of modern education in rural Iowa. When it was built, the school was a marvel. It had boiler heating, electric lights, even an indoor bathroom. But for some, this state-of-the-art school seemed an extravagant display, a monument to arrogance, as one local called it. Even in its early days, this building didn't sit right with everyone. In 2002, after nearly a century of educating local children, the school closed. The laughter and footsteps of children faded, leaving only silence, but in the silence, strange things began happening. Jim and Nancy Oliver purchased the empty building in 2006. Soon after moving in, Nancy experienced something unsettling on the staircase. She became unsteady, and a hand seemed to catch her. Thinking it was her husband, she turned to thank him, only to find herself alone. To this day, Nancy claims that unseen hand saved her from the fall. Later, Nancy and others reported seeing figures of a young boy on the same staircase. A shadow standing about 3.5 feet tall, as if one of the Farrar former students had never left. Over the years, sightings of this ghostly child have become a regular part of the Farrar's lore. Back in the last year of the school, students and teachers reported strange occurrences, lockers slamming shut, doors closing on their own, and shadowy figures walking the halls. But after it closed, the activity seemed to intensify. Then there's the boiler room, a space rumored to hold a portal, as if something beyond this world has seeped into our own. During Sam and Colby's investigation, they often said that they couldn't really figure out why the school was haunted. There were no reported deaths, there was no sign of abuse, although I think it's safe to say that there probably was, given the fact that it was a school in the 1900s, the early 1900s. I think every school had abuse, whether it was filed or not. But yeah, so that's why I'm here. I'm here to try to figure out, why is this place so haunted? What makes it haunted? And so I've spent the last week of my life trying to gather as much research as I can, come up with whatever possible theories that I could about this Farrar Elementary School. Now with that being said, again, these are all just theories. There is no proof of what I'm saying is true, but I think a lot of them do make sense. Some of them are complete theories that really have no backbone on them, but some of them you may find interesting yourself. So often what is talked about as what makes the Farrar Elementary School haunted is what lies across the street, the Farrar Cemetery. Here there are 224 graves, and using a site called findagrave.com, I went through every single one of those graves. See, on that site you're able to look at whatever graves are in the cemetery, as well as any other cemetery, and also gives you a little obituary if there's one given for that person. So I went through all 224 of them, trying to find whatever little information I could that might explain why this place is so haunted. I did find a few, but I'll be honest, a lot of them were dead ends. A lot of them were just people that lived in Farrar or were part of what seemed like 4 or 5 major families that kind of like made up Farrar, Iowa, but I did want to share some of my theories and some of the findings that I did find. The first one that I saw was a more recent death. Is a woman named K.A. Geddes Matson. Geddes is a name you'll hear often. In fact, you've already heard it once in this video. You're going to hear it even more here in a little bit. But she was married into the Geddes family. Honestly, she didn't have too much that was attached to this school as well as Farrar as a whole. She was born and raised in Nebraska. As far as I could tell, she never lived in Farrar, but she was buried there. The reason that I put her name down, the one thing that stood out to me was that she was a teacher. Out of the 224 graves that I looked up, there were not many of them, and that's what I was kind of looking for, trying to find somebody who may have taught at the Farrar Elementary School or was a principal there, and I couldn't find anything. Seeing her name as a teacher made me believe that maybe there's a chance that because she was buried there, maybe she just walked across the street and just continued teaching. The one thing that it said about Kay was that she loved teaching. Even when she had stopped teaching after a while to be with her husband, who I believe was in the military, kind of just taking care of his day-to-day life, she still taught even when she wasn't being paid. So maybe her love of teaching caused her to just walk across the street and continue teaching at Farrar Elementary School. But the thing was, who did she teach if the school was vacant? Well, obviously spirits still do reside there, and that brings me up to my next theory, honestly the one that I feel most strongly about. My next theory comes from a young boy's grave that I saw named Charles Gifford Hurst. On March 3rd, 1921, Charles passed away from a sickness. He was just 14 years old and he lived his whole life in Farrar. Now, did he attend the Farrar Elementary School? Obviously not, because he passed away in 1921 and the school didn't open until 1922. But this is what really caught my eye. You see, he was buried in the Farrar Cemetery right across the street. He was buried in 1921. He literally got to see the entire school get built from the ground up. This is a building that he's never seen before. So, before the Farrar Elementary School was created, all they had was a schoolhouse. That really piqued my interest to say, if you were a 14-year-old boy and you see this school with electric lights and indoor bathrooms, and then on opening day, when the first day of school comes and all the kids walk in there, wouldn't that make you say, yeah, hey, I'm a kid, I go to school, you're just, he just wakes up, sees all these kids walking into the school, and he just walks in with them. Is it possible that Charles was one of the first students, even though he was never on the attendance sheet? Was it possible he was one of the first students that was a part of the Farrar Elementary School? This is the one that I truly do believe. In fact, I think that he could have been the one that they've seen on the stairs. Given that he was 3.5 feet tall. And also it was 1921, so it's possible that maybe he was the normal height for a 14-year-old in 1921. And not only that, but they also say when they saw his figure, they see him walking down the stairs, which, again, if you're walking down the stairs, your height's going to be a little bit different than if you were just standing there. I believe in my heart Charles is one of the spirits that resides at this school. That is the one theory that I have complete faith in. One of the things that I did when I was doing my research was I looked up any crimes that had been committed in the area, and there was one that really stood out to me. In April of 2017, a man named Chase Nicholson had killed his mom, dad, and sister in Bondurant, Iowa. Bondurant is the town next to Farrar. Nicholson admitted to these murders 12 hours after it took place to a co-worker. Chase suffered from a mental illness, as a lot of the family members had stated, and from what they had said is that Iowa, at least back in 2017, possibly still today, I don't really have information on that, but they did not take mental illness seriously, and because of that, we had lost 3 people in this world to that mental illness. Like I said, he killed his mom, his dad, and his sister. So I started looking into the 3 victims. The first one was the father. He didn't really have a whole lot to go off of as far as why he would have anything to do with the Farrar Elementary haunting. He was a postal worker for USPS in Des Moines, Iowa. The whole family lived in Des Moines, which is pretty close to Farrar. Then I got to the mother, Charla, who was a teacher for the Des Moines public school system. However, it did not state anywhere that she did teach at the Farrar Elementary School. She did teach for a good 30 years, I believe, in the Des Moines public school system, but again, never stated anything with Farrar. Doesn't mean that she didn't, though. There is a chance that maybe that's where she did her student teaching, or maybe she had to stop there for like a year that maybe the other coworkers didn't really know about, and so they ended up not putting that in her obituary. But again, there is no evidence saying that she did work there. However, his sister that he had murdered, Tawny, did graduate from Bondurant Farrar High School in 2011. This was a big thing to me that I saw. You see, Bondurant Farrar is the merger of the two high schools. Farrar used to be its own school system. It used to be an elementary school and a high school. And then once they finally realized, hey, we probably don't need this much schooling for Farrar when we can just move them to a nearby neighborhood. So Farrar Elementary School ended up going to Anderson Elementary School, and Farrar High School merged with Bondurant High School, creating Bondurant Farrar High School. This was a big thing for me because I realized that if Tawny was graduated in 2011, that means that she would have been in elementary school. She would have started in 1998 or 1999. And if she still lived in that area, I'd say there's probably a good 50% chance that she actually attended Farrar Elementary School. And not only that, she would have been one of the final students at the Farrar Elementary School. Again, I do want to state that this is just theory. I do not know for a fact that she did attend Farrar Elementary School. Have no way of really knowing that. Even if she did, again, that kind of leads the question of like, why would she be at the school? Why would she, maybe she did have an attachment to the school, but I would kind of doubt it, just given the fact that she was 24 years old when she passed away. She would have been 5, 6, maybe 7 when she attended her final year at Farrar. So I think this is kind of more of just an open theory. Could be, maybe, like I said, she did have an attachment to it if she even went there. But again, more of just something kind of odd that I noticed in my research. Hey everyone, post-production Rob here. I'm about to talk about the Geddes family, and I'm about to talk about C.G. Geddes, and who I end up calling Ronald Geddes. I had the name wrong. It was definitely C.G. Geddes. That was the one that donated the land. The dates was what was kind of throwing me off, but there was a C.G. Geddes that actually was alive during that time, and he, I believe, was the oldest one that I could find. So C.G. Geddes was the owner of the land, not Ronald, so please pardon the incorrection there. But yeah, C.G. Geddes is the owner of the land. The one thing I will say that I want to preface is that he did die in 1924, so 3 years after he had donated the land to the school. So that kind of gives a possible explanation of why he donated the land, or why he was so kind with doing that. Although I would say I'm not 100% certain on that, because he did die at the age of 54. So that seems a little bit early. Obviously, it is the time before modern medicine was really that great. But yeah, so I think my theory still kind of stands with this, of why he could be watching over the school. But anyway, I'll let Pastor Rob talk more about that. The next thing I want to talk about is another theory that I feel pretty strongly in. When Sam and Colby did their investigation, they kept bringing up the fact that there was this principal entity. The principal was the one that protected the school. However, again, they never really figured out a name. They think it was the name Frank, but they're not 100% sure. It could have just been a name that came over on the spirit box. It could have been maybe one of the other spirits there. The name that really rang out to me was C.G. Geddes, or who I believe the reports are not correct. I believe they said it was C.G. Geddes, but from what I could see, C.G. Geddes was born in 1945. I believe they were talking about his father, Ronald Gamble Geddes, who was the owner of the land. So Ronald, who may be C.G., maybe he went by C.G. for some reason, but his son's name was Clark Gamble Geddes, so I assumed that was C.G. Geddes, but Maybe, like I said, maybe Ronald was called C.G. Geddes for some reason. But he was the owner of the land that he donated to the Farrar Elementary School. He was a farmer. He owned a lot of land around the school. And then, like I said, he donated 6 acres of the land to Farrar to build this school. Now, one thing that really caught my eye was, why would a farmer donate 6 acres of land to a school that a lot of residents in that area didn't really care for? They didn't like it. They thought it was a monument to arrogance. And so that began to make me think that maybe the full story never came out about why Ronald had given the land to Farrar Elementary School. Maybe it wasn't as much of a donation as much of a, we're taking this to build the school, or maybe there was some bullying involved that made him give it away, or maybe some blackmail. Who knows? We don't really know the situation. And so because of this, he gave up his land, and then 80 years after the school was built, they shut its doors down. And they say after that happened is when the activity really started to take place. This is my theory, is that the principal is not necessarily a principal, but I think it's Ronald. I think Ronald is the one that is looking over his land. It's his family's land. He's the one that owned it and gave it to the school, and now 80 years after, it's just shutting down. And so that may be why the activity's starting to pick up, is because he may also find it kind of annoying that he just gave his land away and now it's just being ran into the dirt. This also brings up another one of my theories of why the ghosts don't like Sam and Colby. Again, if Ronald donated this land to the school, 80 years it ran, but then they shut it down, and now it just stands abandoned. And then here we are probably another 20 years later after it closes down, and here come these two, in his eyes, young kids. Obviously they're men, but these two young kids come and purchase this building that is reportedly his. He's the protector, and now these two kids that he doesn't really know are taking it over. And even though they're trying to help, they're trying to rebuild it and make it safe and make it structurally sound once again, he may not think so much. So that is my complete theory, that I really do believe about the principal, that it's not necessarily the principal, but instead the owner of the land. One other theory that I have about the children spirits that are attending Farrar Elementary is that graveyard across the street. When I did my research, the 224 graves that were there, 23 of them were infants, children, or toddlers. And so I could believe that it wasn't just Charles that made his way across the street to go to school when it opened up in 1922, but instead maybe some of the other ones that never really got to experience a childhood walked with him as well. So I do believe that there is a chance that they are the ones that are also residing at the school. The last thing we need to talk about is the boiler room. Now again, I don't really have a good theory on the boiler room. There's no evidence to really say one thing or another. I do have two theories, but again, I don't really stand by them a whole lot. Just more of thoughts than anything. So the boiler room is the most haunted room, is the most demonic room. The only things I could cover from that is maybe there are dark secrets of Farrar that we're not aware of. You see, when the building was built, it was 1,700 square feet, which isn't the biggest school, but it's also a major step up from what they had before. Again, they had the whole school in the schoolhouse, this little one-room schoolhouse, and then they say, okay, now we're going to build this giant school, quote-unquote giant school, and it's going to house all of these kids, and it's going to be their education. So again, that leads me to believe that maybe there was more dark presence here than we knew about. Maybe that boiler room had more evil entities that were summoned there. Again, no proof about it. Maybe the Geddeses had something to do with it. Again, if you donate that land, you're expecting something in return. What if they had some sort of deal with the school where they could do some dark satanic rituals or something in the basement or in the boiler room? But again, that is kind of something I don't like to stand by unless we have proof, because that is kind of a big allegation to a family that was obviously very, very prominent in Farrar. Again, take that with a grain of salt. I don't really want to say that is exactly what's going on there. The other theory is the ley lines. If you're unfamiliar with ley lines, welcome to the club. I don't really understand them a whole lot, but from what I can gather, there is a ley line that runs through Farrar, Iowa. It's the ley line that connects the Missouri River from Jefferson City, Missouri, all the way to the Mississippi River in St. Paul, Minnesota. So obviously those are two of the bigger rivers in America, and obviously they've probably seen some pretty crazy, demented, evil stuff happen to them. So who's to say that ley line connected is just making a breeding house for demonic energy at the Farrar Elementary School? Again, I don't really understand ley lines or necessarily believe in them a whole lot, but if you do, I'd love to hear your opinions and theories on that as well down in the comments section below. So that is going to do it for today. I hope that you guys did enjoy. If you did, please click that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and I'm trying to get there by the end of August. And I definitely need your help to get there. So if you could, just take a second out of your day. It's absolutely free. Just hit that subscribe button for me. It would mean the world to me. Also, my new book, The Hollow Season, is coming out on August 1st. You can pre-order it right now on Amazon. It is going to include 6 chilling tales perfect for the upcoming spooky season, and it's a series that you're not going to want to miss. But I also want to know, what are the thoughts on the theories that I propose about the Farrar Elementary School? Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear about that. And if you guys had already seen this episode from when it first came out, I do apologize that there's not really a new episode this week. But again, just given that back then I didn't really understand thumbnails or titles, I really wanted to re-upload this because I feel like there is a lot of good information about the Farrar Elementary School that I think should be shared to a lot more people. So that was my reasoning for re-uploading it this week. But we will be back next week. Anyway, I hope that you guys did enjoy. If you did, click that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for spending a little bit of your evening here with me.